Okay, guys, I'll kick off. Thanks everyone for joining this exclusive webinar this morning for the City and County Councils. My name is Louise O'Flynn. I'm an account manager in Strencom, which is an Irish-owned telecoms company providing cloud connectivity, networking and security. During this webinar, we'll show you how to leverage government networks to access cost-effective VMware DR as a service. Brian Humphreys from Cork County Council will be speaking at the end of the webinar on why he chose this DR solution and the benefits they've seen from using it. We'll also open up the floor for any Q&A at the end, and feel free to put any questions into the chat as we work through the presentation. But for now, I'd like to hand over to Guy Bartram, EMEA Cloud Director at VMware.
Thanks, Louise.
Guy.
No worries. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great. So hi everyone, as Louise says, my name is Guy Bartram. I'm Director of Product Marketing for Cloud Services Business Unit in VMware. And today we're going to talk about the VMware Disaster Recovery as a solution that Strencom has deployed and is now branded as the Push Button DR across government networks. So as you heard, that was Louise talking, and Walsh is also online, and Brian Humphreys will be speaking later on. We're just going to cover a few basics first around the cloud trends. Why Strencom as a partner, cloud managed services. We'll talk about disaster recovery, then we'll look at the actual solution itself. And then Brian will come on and talk about the case study he's been experiencing. So from a cloud trends perspective, what we see in VMware is a large drive to an increase in private cloud and an increase in public cloud usage. So when you're looking at applications, where applications are going to be moving to, more and more applications are moving from IT non-cloud environments into private cloud, private hosted cloud, particularly with service providers, and also into public cloud where it's feasible. And this is really, due to the fact that the applications are requiring more consistency, more agility, which traditional IT has not been able to provide. And this is a growing trend that we're seeing. But it's not just one cloud provider that most customers use. Most customers are actually outsourced. I think it's around 15 to 20 public cloud vendors and cloud providers. So it's very much what we call a hybrid environment. At its basic form, that can be, the integration of on-premise and off-premise environments. And so DR is actually, a hybrid service. It is something that is, running on your premise and replicating your machines to an off-premise location for protection. So that actually counts as a hybrid environment. And as you can see, most of the customer base we talk to are in the process of moving to a hybrid IT environment. And why is that relevant? Well, the flexibility of hybrid is really very important. When we look at the hybrid use cases, as I mentioned, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner there, data protection, i.e. disaster recovery and backup, is a significant chunk at 33% of hybrid usage. 48% of migration, so the ability to move workloads between on-prem and cloud and then different clouds based on things like the cost of the environment. So if it's cheaper to run a workload in a cloud provider or in a hyperscaler, you move the workload to where it's most effectively, economically as well, providing you the best value. Equally, workloads aren't staying stationary. They're going to change. The applications will be redesigned as people go through digital innovation, looking to take advantage of technologies such as mobility and Internet of Things and AI. There's a lot of changes in your traditional workloads, but there is also a huge chunk of traditional workloads that won't change as well. But the development lifecycle is becoming more and more important. And when you look at the bottom right-hand side, you'll see enable multiple applications running in a separate environment to horizontally interoperate. That's really, I guess, the holy grail for hybrid cloud, which is I can run my database on a platform where my database is most optimally suited. I can run my web servers on another platform, which maybe has a better web presence. I can run my load balances in a hyperscale environment, so I've got complete global coverage. And you want those three things, which are three kind of silos, to seamlessly horizontally integrate. And the factors that people are considering, and obviously going through your minds a lot as well, when looking at where you're going to run your workloads. Cost is obviously high concern. Security more and more is becoming one of the highest concerns now. And as we see particularly in these times that we're in at the moment, where malware is more rife than it's ever been, we do see a lot of opportunistic attacks happening now, because people know that there's been a rush to migrate stuff to cloud due to COVID, and that hasn't always been necessarily a secure migration to cloud. So security is much more of a concern than it's ever been, really. But equally, application performance, when you look at a hyperscaler like Amazon or like Azure or like Google, you're in a whole different environment than you are to your traditional VMware vSphere environment. And you're in an environment where you sometimes get what you pay for, not all the time. And the way that the hypervisors, the underlying fabric is actually serving up the performance to you is hidden from you. It's something that you can't change, and it's something you can't see. Whereas in a vSphere cloud, that's a different ballgame. You have more control. So application performance is key as well, and obviously reliability. And then you're down into the things that are perhaps more important to you guys in government: regulatory sovereignty and compliance. So with that said, then what about Strencom? And I've been working with Strencom for about 2.5 years now. They're one of the most innovative partners I work with, and very pleased to see them cloud verified, I think about a year and a half ago. Cloud verified is a badge that we give out to service providers who achieve a certain level of competence with their deployment and with their operations and services that they provide to customers. It's not something we give out lightly. It's something that I think there's about 70 providers globally out of the 4,000 that are in the program. So it is something that providers have to work hard to get and to prove to us that they qualify for this. But to you as a customer, what does it mean? It basically means that they're running a fully deployed VMware stack. So it is completely compatible with your VMware workloads that you run. And that's very important when we start talking about disaster recovery. It's managed by Strencom to be optimizing costs, optimized in performance as well. And they provide that consistent operations for you to help lower your TCO. And it's flexible, right? There's a lot of different services that they provide, a lot of different value-added services, and what we see now is a lot of customers. There's been a bit of a skill drain in the last 5 years, where the industry's changed a lot, and customers struggle now to retain certified architects and operators in different cloud technologies. And it's certainly hard to go and find someone who's AWS certified or Google certified for the price you want to pay, because they are high in demand. And to be honest with you, most of the cloud providers have been hiring them and paying them good salaries because they can maximize that benefit across multiple customers. So it's getting harder for customers to find those skills, and the cloud providers actually have them. And equally, Strencom is a DR as a service partner with us. And again, that's not given out lightly as well. We have think it's 15 partners now globally who are actually certified disaster recovery as a service partners. I manage this program. I set the requirements for it, and they're quite a high bar to pass. So, you know, Strencom has exceeded in delivering this service and utilizing our technology to provide a leading DR service to customers. And we'll come to the specifics of the service in a bit. So how's this gonna, let me just build out this slide because I hate build outs and I always get them wrong. So what does it mean to you? Well, it's a single term of service for you. So your main line of support and your main interaction is with Strencom for both your cloud and your connectivity. So it's a nice single point of subscription, and you're going to hear me talk about Cloud Director and various different products. Basically, Cloud Director is the other product I'm in charge of, and this is really a multi-tenanted platform for delivering services to you. It has a very nice, simple UI that you can use. Doesn't require training or anything like that. It's a bit like when you go to Azure or AWS and you have a portfolio. It's a similar sort of concept in that you have a UI with a portfolio, and you can choose and configure your services and run your services from Cloud Director. So one bill is a nice additional value proposition based on the cloud services and the connectivity services. The service delivery is an important component, and when we talk about DR as a service, this is where you have to deploy something on your premise, and that is a really nice optimized way of delivering with our product with Cloud Director availability, or the point-and-click DR service, as Strencom has branded it. It's a very simple customer deployment and a very simple provider-side configuration. It doesn't take days; it takes minutes, and you can be up and running. And you can access all your other services in that single pane of glass. You can see your usage, and you can see your costs. And Strencom's really, always kept me on my toes, because these guys are always, deploying everything we have, configuring it and making it available to customers, and they're always, leading that initiative. So I'm very pleased to kind of work with them on a lot of different initiatives and a lot of different technologies that we deploy, and they are more than happy to kind of work and reciprocate. But we have the concept of this cloud provider platform, which is an architectural concept based on the integration of multiple products. Basically delivering a service portfolio of disaster recovery, data center extension, to deliver cloud migration, so taking your workloads from your premise to Strencom, delivering you multiple services and different services via marketplace, being able to run backup and data protection, and then providing you operational performance capacity type views and different application services. And you can see some of the core capabilities here. I won't go into them too much detail, but it is basically a delivery platform to focus more on services for customers. It's very quick to spin up new services and fully automated, and you get the services you want your way. So let's just cover DR as a service here. So lots of people, think about DR as basically an insurance, and lots of people don't realize how serious it can be to have downtime. Downtime is extremely expensive. These are average costs based on different types of customer demographics, and really, I think it's something like 6 out of 10 companies that experience disaster recovery and data loss do not recover and close within the first year. So it is really, really quite a serious thing. You work hard to build your data, to build your company. You don't want to lose your data. And if you do lose your data, getting your data back or rebuilding your data is a very expensive thing, as you can see. So what are some of the causes of disasters? You could say that, you know, COVID-19 has been a disaster. It's not been your traditional disaster, but I believe now pandemics are classed as a disaster. But typically, you know, for the last 20 years, since data centers have been kind of really booming, we've seen disasters being based on power outages. You know, if you run a small little data center in a room in your building, you know, I've seen examples where the cleaners unplug the power. I've seen examples where, you know, the fire system has gone off. Networks have failed. You have obviously, you know, software errors which can cause problems. Buffer stack overloads, for example, fairly common problem used to exist on web servers. And if you get these type of errors, you know, and software shuts down in a indeterminate state, then you can result in data loss. Of course, a lot of data loss is actually just human error, which is you know, very, very common. I think probably everyone's had that heart-stopping moment when they've deleted something they didn't think they should have deleted, and suddenly realized they actually did delete it. And that's, you know, when you're looking at large volumes of data and you're dealing with directories with thousands of files on, those sort of mistakes can be kind of fatal. And lastly, like I said, the rise in virus, malware, and ransomware, particularly at the moment where we're seeing massive increases across the board of malware. And these sort of things can be easily prevented by the cloud provider platform that Strencom runs, and particularly one product that we have called NSX, which really provides enhanced security to your workloads. It doesn't look at your entire kind of perimeter around your network. It looks at the individual workloads and protects each one, as each one has its own virtual firewall. So any ransomware which would typically come into your organization via an email or something like that, that typically then tries to go and find another host to spread to. If you're using NSX and using distributed firewalling, it can't reach out that host that it's infected. So you're minimizing the impact of the fact that you are infected. And what we see in VMware is, you know, organizations are looking for cloud providers to help them with fairly mundane tasks like backup and recovery and disaster recovery. Backup and recovery is, you know, something that's become more and more a cloud service in recent years, as cloud capacity has managed to build up storage to suit the type of capacity required for backups. And obviously, there's still a need for things like tape backups and you know, longer term backups, which are actually cheaper than cloud storage, but still, it's a very complicated procedure, and anyone who's managed a backup solution will agree with that. Equally, disaster recovery, it's a complicated thing to actually run and manage. It's not just about the technology, it's about having a plan to recover your business. It's about a business continuity planning, which is, you know, a large chunk of work, where the actual replication and recovery of a workload is actually quite a small component of the overall business continuity plan. So what does VMware do in terms of the disaster recovery service we have? Why are we different? Well, fundamentally, most customers, you know, run vSphere. It's either vSphere or Hyper-V. Typically, you know, Microsoft's hypervisor is called Hyper-V. VMware's hypervisor is vSphere. And what we see is there's a really when you're talking about disaster recovery, it's not just you know, backup. It is backup with the ability to restore fairly quickly, faster than you would do from a backup, and something that has a cycle to it, just like you have with backup tapes, but this is a faster cycle. It's designed really to get people back up and running in a fast time frame. And the reason why I say that is, if you are taking a workload, a vSphere workload, and you're backing up to or you're doing a disaster recovery replication to a non-vSphere target, such as any of the hyperscalers, Azure, they run Hyper-V, AWS, they run KVM, Google, I believe they run KVM as well. You know, these are not vSphere endpoints. So you're taking your vSphere workload, which you run your business on, you're copying it to a non-vSphere endpoint. And when you want to recover that, you actually then got to do a lot of work at this end. You've got to do a conversion. You've got to actually do a disk conversion to the hypervisor format that is running on the target site. That is a timely process. It's not DR. It's a one-way process. It's a migration. Once you've done that, you need to then configure security, networking, high availability, all of the stuff that you would have to do normally. You're going to have to do that manually in that target cloud. So you don't generally come back from there. That's a one-way move. So VMware Disaster Recovery as a Service is disaster recovery as a service. It's not migration as a service. It's not storage as a service. It's disaster recovery as a service. You are really replicating your vSphere VM to a target vSphere environment. If you want to test, you click test. We'll bring it up. You can test it, then you destroy it, and you're back on site. You can do testing without interrupting your production workload on your source site, obviously. Because it's native vSphere at both ends, you don't have to worry about redoing your networking, redoing your security, redoing all of your architecture. It is literally turn it on. That's all you have to do. The transmission between the source site, i.e. your workloads, and the target site in Strencom is all secure via TLS. And one of the big differences in our solution is we are truly self-service. So you can access the solution either on your vCenter or via Cloud Director, which is hosted and run in Strencom. Typically, you'd want to access a disaster recovery service at the target site, so at Strencom. You know, because if there's a disaster, then typically your source site isn't available. So you can access it at either end. That's up to you. But the Strencom provide you access to their UI running on Cloud Director, which provides you the disaster recovery service. It's simple. You know, if I look at other solutions that are out there, you deploy agents. You don't need any agents with this service. It's native. So we already have the agents on the hypervisors, on the vSphere workloads that are running on the hosts. You don't have to deploy any VPN tunnels from each host to the target. There's no complicated networking configurations to do. It really is simple, fast, and uncomplex. And it's, like I said, it's fully self-service, which is a big differentiator, because a lot of the products that you'll see in service providers are provided as managed services. And they do that because, well, one, the customer might want a managed service, but two, because the product doesn't support self-service. What they've been doing is using enterprise products and shoehorning them into a service provider environment. Now, what's important with disaster recovery? Testing. You are only as good as your last test. Same with backups. You know, how often do you test your backups? How often do you test your disaster recovery? Now, to be clear, when you're doing disaster recovery testing, if you're doing proper business continuity planning, a disaster recovery test is a big deal. You know, you need to really plan for how you're going to do full business continuity planning. However, from a technology point of view, if you want to check, you know, that the disaster recovery replication is working to the target site, to Strencom, and test it, they don't limit you in how many times you want to test. You can test at any time you like. And by doing that, you bring this testing gap down, i.e. the time between the last DR and next DR is basically unproven recoverability. If you bring the testing frequency more forward, then you're obviously reducing that unproven recoverability gap, and you can then be much more certain that a disaster recovery, if it happened, you are going to be able to recover. And like I said, it's non-disruptive testing, so it doesn't affect your ongoing replication to Strencom. It doesn't affect your production workloads. So the other important thing for you guys to think about is what workloads require what level of protection. And we have three basic tiers here, which is mission critical, i.e. your business absolutely cannot survive if this application isn't available, cannot survive at all. Now this, I always have to remind people, what is mission critical is so important that you're going to be paying a lot of money to replicate it. In reality, the amount of mission critical workloads a customer actually has is incredibly small, if they have any at all. So an example of this would be a credit card payment system. If you were Visa, for example, your credit card payments machines are pretty important to you. You can't survive if they're down. Your company will be ruined. So, those are mission critical. Business critical has different characteristics, different recovery point objectives, and different recovery time objectives. And here, this is day-to-day business stuff. If it goes down, you need it back up in a certain time frame, but it's not going to end your business within hours. And then, of course, non-critical, which is, you can survive for a day or so without it. It's not a problem, but yeah, you do want it back. So when we look at how these kind of bands fit into Strencom's offering, Point and Click DR, has a default silver offering, a default bronze offering, but you can actually uplift that offering based on, your workloads. So you don't have to take, one size for your entire estate. You're able to choose different sizes going forward into your estate. So if you have some workloads that are business critical, some workloads that are more business critical, perhaps touching on mission critical, then you can, obviously choose the characteristics, the workload, and match it against the DR tier, i.e. the offering that you want. And there's various things in this offering, like recovery point objective. The more granular the recovery points, basically the more data you're going to consume, but you're not going to have as much data loss, obviously. Retention policies are, the speed of circulation of the recovery points. So you want more instances and less time. That's going to be more expensive because it's going to consume more storage, but it gives you much better granularity of recovery. Coercing is a Microsoft thing for basically doing clean shutdown of applications before you actually take the copy. Compression is pretty much on all the time. It is line compression, so it is compression of the replicant before it's sent over the line. And sync start time is useful for offices that bandwidth is a premium. You might be in an office with 200, 300 people. You don't want to start replicating your workloads in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when everyone's coming back from lunch, because the network's going to be busy and you've only got a certain amount of bandwidth. So you might want to start the sync after hours. That flexibility is there as well for the service. So some of the benefits, scale. It scales out to pretty much limitless. You have full control over DR. Like I said, you can take the out-of-the-box service tiers, gold, silver, bronze, or you can, ask Strencom to allow you to make custom profiles for different workloads if you require. It's agentless, so there's no agents for you to manage on your premise. No complicated VPNs to set up from every host. No complicated networking. It's native. That is a massive plus to disaster recovery. You don't want to be doing disk conversions. Believe me, it's nasty when you actually try and recover them. Monitoring is built in, and it's a simple kind of UI. The other kind of use case for this is if you look at disaster recovery, what are you doing? You're replicating a VM to a target site constantly. This means that if you do want to migrate, you've got a replicant at the target site. It's nice and easy to do a cutover then. And the solution obviously supports as well this migration capability. So you can do a cold migration where you completely shut down the VM on the source site, do a whole replication of the VM in its shutdown state to the target site, and then start up at the target site. Or you can do a warm migration, which will continue to replicate until you're ready to cut over. So it's faster. It does an initial sync, you power off, and then it does that final sync, but the sync will be only of the diff. It won't be a full sync again. So it's a faster one, and you can actually schedule that to happen at various times of the day, should you want to migrate. Now, one of the this is a very, very high level kind of picture, but from a Strencom perspective, obviously peered to existing government MPLS networks, adding in remote sites is a very simple operation of adding in a VRF to the MPLS configuration, which basically allows Strencom then to connect through to your offices and for you to then run a single VPN tunnel to Strencom so you can start replicating securely directly to them. And this also can happen over the internet. So if you have offices and sites that aren't on the government MPLS clouds, then you can obviously use the internet, and the data is encrypted over the internet in any case. It's a really simple install on-prem. It's a single virtual appliance, and any vSphere administrator can deploy one of those. I mean, I actually did this, and I have only deployed one VMware product in my entire life, and it's this product. I installed it about 2 years ago, and I went to a training camp and installed it, and actually I'd never deployed anything before in vCenter, and even I managed to do it without any problems at all. It took me about 5 minutes, so it's very easy. Like I say, no agents deploy. You just deploy the virtual appliance on your vCenter. It can then automatically see all of the VMs in the vCenter. You can then select which ones you want to replicate. You can either do that in the vCenter, or you could do it through Strencom's UI over the internet. And like I said, test where you like. One of the big differences here is there's no egress charges, so you're not being charged for moving data back out, which you would be in a hyperscaler as well, and very convenient to kind of access the UI and access the service itself. Okay, I think that's it from me.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks a million. Everyone that's on the call is on mute. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to unmute or put your question into the chat. Guy would be more than happy to answer any questions. So we'll hand over to Brian now from Cork County Council as to why he has adopted this DR as a service in Cork County Council. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Louise. Hi, lads. Hi, Guy. How you doing, lads? I suppose from our perspective, really, we did have an infrastructure in place with Navasco, and we were using Zerto to replicate about 10, 11 machines up into that environment. Now, the one caveat with that is we could spin them up in a test environment up there, but if we wanted to bring them back onto site, it took hours to bring them back on because they were shipping the VMDKs back down to us, right? Okay, so Navasco were ceasing that service when they were purchased by Canicom, right? So we had to look again at our estate, right? So we decided to go out and we get a few costs from different providers right now. What we wanted to do is we wanted to make sure that this DR site was going to be GN connected, okay, because we have a majority of our sites all GN connected. I suppose we'd have over 160 sites and they would all be GN connected. We didn't want to be building VPNs in other sites. We didn't want to be building VPNs in County Hall or we've another presence in CIX because we experienced massive latency issues, right? So there was we approached Strencom. Strencom done a cross connect with us up in CIX, and we done a POC. And in fairness, it just worked. Like there was no problems. Replicated the data across, and once we spun the machines up, we were able to spin them up in a test environment. Worked perfect, no problem. The next big key milestone for us really was spinning the machine up and ensuring that we could access the cross-government network. So we spun the test machine up, shut down the machine in County Hall, spun the test machine up in Strencoms DR, accessed it, I'd say, from about 15 of the GN sites, and not a problem. So as I said, it just really worked very well. I was fairly surprised that it worked very well, actually, to be honest, G. So we've now started to replicate across 10 of the machines across in the DR environment. No, I'd say about 2 machines that were terabytes of the replication. We've done a warm replication across, right? So it did take it did take about, I'd say about 3 days to replicate that data across on there, right? And now I'd say the synchronizing then is fairly good, like, you know. So we've put a policy in place that we're doing test failovers on a every 30-day basis, you know. So as I said, it's working very well in fairness to Strencom. So
Great, Brian. Thanks so much.
no
I
better.
loving the backdrop there.
I wish it was real.
Okay, so will we just open the floor to any questions? Thanks so much, Brian. Has anyone got any questions or?
Louise, so it's Tim here. So just I've taken a few off the chat here, so I'll just put them out. The first one, actually, Brian probably half mentioned it maybe as well. How does it compare to Zerto in terms of setup and recovery? You know, maybe put that out to two people. I might put it out to you, Guy, and then I might just put it out to Brian in terms of, you know, real life example as well. You might give us the kind of differences in, I suppose, yeah, setup and recovery, Guy, or product differences.
Yeah, I mean, so Zerto fundamentally uses a different kind of capability. Zerto is all about journaling, right? So they're doing a lot of continuous data replication, whereas what we do is scheduled block replication. So fundamentally, we're different, right? They journal for up to 30 days, and they can do that every 10 seconds. And you know, they give some pretty kind of good, very short RPOs, you know, down to 10-second RPOs. And the reason why they can do that is because they journal all the data. However, journaling data is huge volumes of storage, absolutely huge. And like I said, I think people have got to really consider what is, you know, what is mission critical. I would say if you've got real mission critical workloads, then journaling is actually a good mechanism for doing DR. I'm certainly not going to beat Zerto up, but I think they have a great solution for the type of workload that you're looking for. Whereas, you know, if you're looking for anything beyond a 5-minute RPO, that's what we support. That's what the VMware Cloud Director availability branded Strencom point and click supports. And, you know, I think the other major difference is that, you know, we don't have VPNs from every host to the target site. We don't have to deploy agents on every host. They're already there. We have a self-service UI, which is really slick and easy to use. And it just works. There's not any complexity. The networking complexity in Zerto is a headache. And yeah, I'll defer to Brian to give some realities here. Go for it, Brian.
Yeah, I suppose the biggest issues that we had with Zerto was it could fail. Let's say you fail on a weekly basis, you know, the networking was a disaster in it. Now that could be in the configuration from day one, right? But it just, we were guaranteed a failure every week. And I think one time it failed and we had to pull back a machine. Now, I suppose the environment too was slightly different there in that when we tried to pull that machine back, it took hours to get that machine back down into us, right? And no, it worked, but the instance that we were taking was, geez, I'd say it's about 3 or 4 days old, like, you know, because the actual with the comfort networking configuration had broke, you know. Alerting, I will definitely say the alerting is much better. The RPO violations are much better in the replication and the VMware replication as opposed to the Zerto, right? We were getting an awful lot of false positives there. Okay.
Thanks a million, Brian.
No better.
Next question there. Look, it's probably partially Strencom answer, partially Guy as well, but how secure is the DR backup data in the Strencom cloud, and where is the Strencom cloud located? There's a second question, which is probably from somebody else, which is probably slightly related, and is the cloud owned and operated by Strencom or by VMware, and where is the data located? So there's a couple of questions there, I suppose. First one, Guy, maybe, how secure is the backup data?
So we secure the backup data in transport from source to target. You know, how Strencom then kind of homes that or looks after that data in their cloud is, you know, subject to the cloud provider platform capabilities, and that is, you know, you're fully micro-segmented. All workloads are protected. You know, the data and stuff. Probably the technical guys can talk better about it from that perspective. But yeah, from a product standpoint, we provide SSL VPN between source and target, so it's encrypted during transport, and then it's in the Strencom cloud. So I'll let the Strencom team talk about that.
Okay, so I'll actually take the answer to that question myself as well. A couple of things. So yeah, it's in terms of the security, it's fully microsegmentation for customers that have private links into us, and primarily it starts off as a private cloud. It can be enabled for public utilization across the internet, but effectively it's a private cloud. It's not by default connected to the internet, versus we'll say an Azure or an AWS, which is by default connected to the internet, and 99% of users who use it connect through the internet. Whereas with most of our customers, we do have some of them over the internet, but it's mainly around their own either government networks in a government scenario or else MPLS. So again, you've got another layer of security around the networking there and MPLS. The other thing I suppose to be aware of is we are ISO 27001, 2013, the most latest standard certified, and the exact scope, for those who are aware of ISO in detail, the exact scope is this, is our cloud solution, right? So it's ISO 27001 is all around ISMS, Information Security Management Systems. So it's really all about the security of the data in there. And the final question there, the owned and operated. So it is owned and operated by Strencom. It is sitting on VMware infrastructure, so it's the VMware hypervisor, but it is all of Strencom's hardware, all of our storage, all of our networking in our cages, in our data centers, located in Ireland. It is 100% located in Ireland, and there is no data that ships out of Ireland unless a customer ships the data themselves out of Ireland, but we don't take it outside of Ireland from that point of view. So very secure, and you maintain that data sovereignty, which is much talked about, these things. So in terms of questions, they're the that's kind of the end of the questions, but if anybody else would like to submit a question or actually just come off mute and ask a question directly, I'm happy to take another 1 or 2 questions. We're just around our time, but we started a couple of minutes late, waiting for a couple of people to come in, so happy to take any questions if somebody wants to come off mute.
Tim, just Sean Bunyan, Donegal, just ask Brian, what types of servers is he replicating over to the environment?
Okay, so we have got, I was actually just looking at them there literally, I'd say about 10 minutes ago. So what we have is we've got our DC coming across, right? We got Integra, our application, and our database server. We've got 2 big database servers, all running SQL. We've got our WebGIS server, the one in the DMZ, which is got an awful lot of planning applications. We've got our planning data, and we've got our housing applications. So all mission critical servers really to the organization.
Okay, that's fine, thanks.
No better.
Thanks, Sean, for that. Does anybody else want to come off mute and ask a question? And okay. So just, I suppose, look, I'll pass back over to you, Louise, just to wrap up in terms of next steps for anybody and wrap up. I personally just want to thank Guy and Bartram, or Guy and Brian as well, Guy Bartram and Brian Humphreys. Thanks very much, guys, for joining. So, Louise.
Yeah, thanks guys. So the call has been recorded, and we'll be sending it out to everyone that registered for the event. And we'll be in touch then over the next week. And if any of you would like to participate in a demo, that's something that myself and Dermot from Strencom can organise for you. Just need to get time slots and diaries of engineers. So drop me a mail and we can organise it for you, no bother. So thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks, Brian. Thanks
No
for coming
bother,
on the
no
call.
bother.
Appreciate it.
Just my perspective, right? If any of the lads need to look at the GN connectivity that we've rolled out, give us a shout there in Cork, and I'll show you the setup there because it works very, very well. In fairness, you know. All right.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Brilliant. Right, guys. Thanks a mil. We'll call
Thanks,
it a
guys.
day.
Thanks, Ray.
Have a good weekend,
Thanks very
everyone.
much.
Yeah,
Have a
everybody.
great weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good luck. Cheers.
Bye. Bye-bye.